What is a moment from one of your earlier films that you didn't get to shoot in IMAX that you most wish you could have had an IMAX camera for?
Wow.
Where we're going, we don't need roads.
Mr. Nolan, honored to see you again, sir. When you and I spoke for Dark Knight Rises some years back, I brought up the fact that you can see the Batman symbol in some of your earlier films like Memento and following. When I was watching Memento, I noticed something very interesting.
Yes.
Can you imagine what I might have seen in Memento? And you told me at the time...
What you've seen in Memento, which no one else has ever asked me about actually, is there are a number of comic book logos at one point in that film. Once again, pure coincidence. But it is, I mean, it's coincidence. But what we make of coincidences is up to us. But
so flash forward to today, I want to bring up the fact that the characters in Tenet talk about Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
I believe that a book that Robert Oppenheimer is reading in this film is on the bookshelf in Interstellar, a book by T.S. Eliot. So 11 years later, I'd love to know what you make of these coincidences. Do you see any kind of a spiritual connection between all of your films?
Well, I think with every film, if I've done my job right, you're left with interesting questions at the end of it. And in the case of Tenet, the reference to Oppenheimer, the reference to this incredible moment in history where the scientists of the Manhattan Project could not completely rule out the possibility of a chain reaction that would destroy the entire world when they set off that first device, the gadget as they call it, that just stayed with me. I mean, we use it as a metaphor in Tenet for a science fiction conceit. But it stayed with me, and I wanted to take the audience there. I wanted to be there in that room myself and imagine what is it like to push that button, knowing that there's even the smallest possibility that you might be ending life on Earth.
And they still push it.
And they still push it. Well, they felt they had no choice. And the more I found out about this story, the more that really seemed to be the case, that they were in this extraordinary race against the Nazis to try and harness this power that all the scientists around the world knew was possible.
You talk about leaving us with questions. I want to talk about the different ways your films have left me as an audience member. Walking out of Batman Begins, cheering with my friends. Walking out of Inception, and some of the biggest debates and arguments I've ever had with my friends. And then walking out of Oppenheimer last night in silence. I know a large portion of your job is considering what the theatrical experience is going to be like for us when we're inside that theater, but how much thought from you goes into what our drive home is like?
I mean, a lot. For me, one of the big differences between movies and any other medium, like television or radio or whatever, is endings and the way in which the story has to end. It's not a continuing story. It's not episodic. We need a complete experience, a full meal. And so as filmmakers, we're always thinking about what are we leaving people with? Because in a way, it's very important how we begin, but it's very, very important what we leave people with. And I try to craft an ending for each film that suits the subject, suits the story, and hopefully has resonance. I think resonance really for me is the thing. I want people thinking about the film after they've seen it. Then I feel like I've done my job right.
With all due respect to some of my best friends who are on this junket, I didn't want to talk to them after this movie. I kind of wanted to just be in it. It goes without saying that last night's presentation, 70mm IMAX, the absolute perfect presentation of this film. And I love how also you use it for the smaller, quiet moments as well, which got me thinking, what is a moment from one of your earlier films that you didn't get to shoot in IMAX that you most wish you could have had an IMAX camera for?
Wow. Well, you know, we didn't have IMAX on the early films. We didn't have it for Batman Begins, for example. And certainly, you know, the first time you see the Batmobile and that whole car chase, which we put our hearts and souls into, it would have been really fun to actually do that on IMAX. Although we were able to blow it up and present it that way for audiences.
It was beautiful.
But shooting on the format, it gives you clarity and crispness that just takes you to a place. And so really in any of my films, whether it's giant vistas or exciting action set pieces or, you know, in the case of Oppenheimer, there's a lot that, as you say, it's quiet and personal moments. It's just being with somebody and feeling that you're in their space and seeing the world the way, you know, J. Robert Oppenheimer saw the world.
Absolutely. Give me the wrap. I want to cut you loose really quickly on practical effects because the evolution of your practical effects, I'm from Chicago. Every time I cross LaSalle, I can't help but see the truck flip. I can't help but think about the hallway turning or the crashing of the plane or the bomb in this case. I'm sort of curious, it feels like you're continuously learning from one massive practical effect to the other and it's evolving. What's the most you've ever learned from a practical effect that taught you the rest of the way through the rest of your career?
I think, I've done a lot of large-scale practical effects. They come together in Oppenheimer in the Trinity test, which we knew had to be a showstopper and had to have the beauty, but also the threat and danger that would have been felt watching that take place. And I think that probably the single most influential for me was that truck flip on LaSalle that you refer to, because I had an idea in my head for what I wanted to do, and at first everybody felt that it was too difficult, too complicated to do for real. And we started looking at visual effects solutions. And then over time, the great team that I put together, the special effects guys, Chris Corbola did all the Bond movies and everything, they came around to, no, there is a way to do this. And they came to me and they showed me how it could be done. And from that, I learned that if you challenge people and you come to them early enough, and in the case of Oppenheimer, I went to Andrew Jackson, who's doing visual effects, Scott Fisher on special effects, said to them right from the beginning, let's show the first atomic bomb without using computer graphics. Let's find real ways to photograph this so that the audience can get that particularly hypnotic and dangerous feeling that you would have had watching the first example of nuclear fire that had ever been unleashed.
Mr. Nolan, I just want to end by saying thank you, sir. Some of the greatest cinematic experiences of my life have ended with directed by Christopher Nolan. So I just want to thank you for your time. To know how you have a busy schedule, so I appreciate you sliding me in.
Thank you.
A real honor. Thank you,
Thanks
sir.
very much.
Appreciate you.
Where we're going, we don't need roads.